Oh, hello there. Yes, well, it's turning into that time of year where it's warmer outside than in. Yeah, there was a lot of that yesterday. And yesterday there was lots of fine examples of the British press and media at their absolutely appalling worstness. You couldn't move for the grifters yesterday who were jumping up and down about this one. Toddler kicked out of nursery for being transphobic. Child suspended from state school for abuse against sexual orientation and gender identity. Official figures show, yes, somebody I think at the Telegraph has gone through some stats and discovered one. Oh dear. Yes, this led to basically Talk TV, GB News, the Mail, the rest of them, and every nasty right winger on Twitter launching into this. Here's Julia Hartley-Brewer. Wasn't mentioning Quakers and free speech, unfortunately. Oh my God, what's going on? Julia Hartley-Brewer slams the decision to exclude a toddler from nursery school for being transphobic. Oh no, something I'd be willing to lose my job for. I refuse to be made to lie. Yes, really quite odd in its own right, bearing in mind she works for Rupert Murdoch. The Daily Mail managed to really kick out the usual transphobic stuff that they do. Toddler is kicked out of nursery for being transphobic, notice in inverted commas, as families, plural, blast school's insanity. Yes. Do you know the nursery in question? Because the Daily Mail, the Daily Express, the Daily Telegraph, the Daily Julia Hartley-Brewer, and others didn't. Come back to that in a second, but the Daily Daily Mail managed to bring out the usual transphobic suspects. So we had Helen Joyce, a woman who's remarkably adept at being an expert about everything, to the extent that last year she got kicked out of an Australian court that she's specifically flown to be an expert witness because the judge said that she wasn't. Still, she just is, isn't she? But anyway, she's always on hand to be interviewed at the drop of a hat. We also had these people, the Rose, who are, I can only describe as, well, sort of like professional Christians. Yes, and of course the Daily Mail dragged up every single, oh, isn't it awful transphobia case they could think of, and so we get in 2022 a Church of England school in the Isle of Wight warned a 6-year-old boy's parents he might be deemed transphobic. And it's worthwhile just quoting this because it really does get to the heart of, well, their matter. Sally and Nigel Rowe, whose sons attended a Church of England school, said they'd received a letter from the head teacher and Church of Governors and Chair of Governors which declared pupils could be designated the term if they showed an inability to believe a transgender person is actually a real female or male. They claimed, no one's actually seen this letter, the letter also added that refusing to use a transgender pupil's adopted name or gender-appropriate pronouns would be considered transphobic behaviour. Yeah, because it is in adults, I'm afraid. That's one of the definitions that we have. Transphobia aroused in education came to a head in 2021 when feminist professor Kathleen Stock was cancelled and forced to leave the University of Sussex. Yes, drag that one up as well, because of course she's been in the news because, the university got fined for various things, including her. And yes, obviously, it just goes to show how appalling it is that this young person has, well, what exactly? Well, the answer is that if you actually read, I know, stunning, isn't it? If you read the Telegraph piece, it'll tell you in full. The school and further details of the case were not disclosed. Oh, kind of makes that a bit different, really, doesn't it? Yes. But well, here we go. Statistics show that 94 pupils at state primary schools were suspended or permanently excluded for transphobia and homophobia in 22-23. These included 10 pupils from year 1 and 3 from year 2, where the maximum age is 7. Right. One of these included a child of nursery age, the data shows. Now, that puts a slightly different perspective on it. Well, for someone like me that's kind of interested in those things, media representation or just the truth, if you like. Because one has to ask oneself, why exactly is it that this child realistically was suspended? Presumably, and I can only presume in the same way that all these other people are presuming a great deal about it, if it was for transphobia, it's because the child was in many ways doing things that were really nasty. Now, I'm a special needs teacher, as some of you all know, and often, children can, even at a very young age, can display incredibly nasty behaviour that standard people in nurseries or primary schools or indeed secondary schools can't deal with. It's one of the reasons I do the job that I do, because I often deal with people that no one else will work with. About half of my workload is pupils who other teachers, even in the same organisations I work for, have refused to work with. It's kind of what I do. But the thing about this, of course, is we don't know what was going on with this child. We don't know. It could have been that they were grossly homophobic. And one has to say, well, where exactly would they get that from? Bearing in mind that the Daily Mail, Julia Hartley-Brewer et al., et al., et al., et al., will insist to us that the only reason why children display behaviours like being non-binary or trans is because adults have persuaded them. So how come this child hasn't been persuaded by their parents or indeed the other people? Well, that just doesn't fit our nasty narrative, does it? No, we can't make that trans people are bad. We can't get to interview Helen over and over and over again about how appalling or stupid or silly it all is for days on end. Yes. Slightly different viewpoint on that thing. And again, if you think about Julia Hartley-Brewer et al., et al., et al., they are people who insist that, for example, young people, by which they mean anybody who's still in any form of education, can't possibly make up their own minds about things like, I don't know, genocide in Gaza. Yeah, these undergraduates can't make up their own minds. They're adults who are educated. You can't expect them. They must be manipulated by people, well, like me, obviously. So I will refer all of these people to, our great friend Tommy Robinson, Stephen Yaxley Lennon, who posted his admin post because he's still languishing in solitary, even though he's there for his own safety. But we won't mention. Well, I just have, haven't I mentioned that? Anyway, admin post. Tommy Robinson explains: if you've got a non-binary or gender-confused child, you've taken your eye off the ball and messed up. Yeah, and if your child is turning up and expressing incredibly nasty and virulent statements, it's because you've turned them into a bigot. You're at fault, parents. But of course, in the Daily Mail's world, that can't exist. That can't exist. In Julia Hartley-Brewer's head, that can't exist. Parents are always right, unless they're poor, in which case, well, they're just useless. But, if they're poor transphobes, oh, well, that's completely different, isn't it? Yes. Welcome to the British media. They won't let any form of factual evidence get in the way of their bigotry. And you've got to admire them for that, because these people have journalist in their passport. And the whole cruise between them, all the usual suspects like everyone's favourite non-vicar and the rest of them, all of them on Twitter, of course, manage to spurt this stuff out because it gets them clicks and they get paid for it. These people are paid bigots. This is the thing. Twitter rewards bigotry, but I don't think we should. And if a child is showing up like that, it probably needs quite a lot of input. You can employ me if you like, but by God, I'm expensive. Anyway, do have a lovely day, and remember, if you are a bigot, do project it onto children, because that's the only sensible thing to do. After all, how are we going to achieve those sunlit uplands if we don't teach children to be racist, sexist, homophobic, et al.? Yes. Oh no, they mustn't be homophobic, even though they probably are, eh? Yeah. Unless it's certain people, once again, eh? But not the nice ones, not the nice gay people like Dougie Murray or Peter Whittle. No, just the nasty ones who are dangerous, the ones we don't know, of course. Like bigots, racists, and everything else elsewhere. Doesn't really make any sense, but that doesn't ever matter, does it? No.